Hey everyone. Okay, so I want to talk today about something that came to my attention, I would say a little while ago, and I've become more and more aware of it as parents talk to me about their concerns with their children in terms of what they're seeing and how it doesn't necessarily totally fit in with the diagnosis and so forth. So if you are confused about your child's struggles, you feel like their diagnosis really doesn't explain everything that they're dealing with, or you feel like you can't figure out what's going on because they're just not getting the results, and you don't really know how to help them because you don't really understand why they're having the difficulties they're having, then this is for you. So you might have heard, if you are in all the groups or reading the books and all that stuff that good moms do like yourself, that dyslexia is a phonemic deficit, and that visual processing disorder obviously has to do with visual processing issues, all of that type of stuff. And it's really not explaining everything that you're seeing. Like maybe your child has a dyslexia diagnosis, but they have some letter reversals, but you keep being told, but that's not part of dyslexia. And you're like, okay, but how do I help them with these letter reversals, right? Or if your child has visual processing issues, but there's other things that are creating these blocks as well, like maybe they are having some difficulty with sounding stuff out. So what does all of this mean, and how can you actually help? So basically, the way it works right now is that dyslexia is diagnosed. The criteria to diagnose it is based on the senses. So dyslexia is phonemic awareness, right? Connected to the ear and auditory processing, whereas visual processing issues are connected to the eyes, right? Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And we are treating those separately. And sometimes I should be clear that in certain countries, kids are diagnosed with a language-based learning disability, or, some places will have what they call visual dyslexia. So there is other diagnoses and so forth, but still, typically it's based on the senses. And this has come under scrutiny. This approach of diagnosing dyslexia based on the senses has come under scrutiny in recent years by certain groups and even certain experts, saying that this really is an ineffective way to do this, that it's too narrow, it's not accurate, and that ultimately it can be detrimental to providing the correct interventions or just effective interventions that will have consistent results for students or for children or people struggling with reading difficulties. So critics are saying that dyslexia is less, or reading difficulties, I should say, are less about the senses and more about what the brain can do simultaneously and sequentially. So this is really interesting to me because I see this a lot with kids who have learning disabilities, ADHD, all that type of stuff, where there's a breakdown with what they can do multiple things at the same time, right? That's simultaneously, and then sequentially being able to do this, then this, then this, then this. So when we look at reading disorders from this perspective, our approach to addressing it actually changes as well. And so this really resonated with me in terms of what we need to do and how we need to look at things to actually get our kids the help that they need. So in 2008, a study found that simultaneous processing disorder was a major factor with kids who had dyslexia compared to their peers who did not have dyslexia. And they found that dyslexic kids had larger impairments with simultaneous processing. So, that would involve things like sounding out, breaking down the sounds, word recognition, letter recognition, visual processing, all of those things at the same time. And so let me clarify in terms of how this looks whenever a child is actually reading and writing and so forth. So when we are speaking, so oral language is sequentially organized. Written language is simultaneously organized. So reading and writing is simultaneously organized. And what the research found is that when we are reading, we're actually doing both. We're doing sequential as well as simultaneous processing. So if your child is reading a text, they're simultaneously processing to perceive the meaning of the word, and they're using sequential processing in order to understand the meaning. So perceiving the meaning and understanding the meaning are two different things. And one study actually found that dysphonitic dyslexia, the inability to sound out words, was related to poor sequential processing, and didactic dyslexia, so the inability to recognize whole words and constantly needing to sound out each word, was related to poor simultaneous processing. So I know this is a bit of a heavy video in terms of like technicalities, but let me know, do you notice this with your child? Do they have a hard time sounding out words? Do they have a hard time recognizing whole words, like say sight words and so forth? What they found also is that really whenever there's breakdown in both areas, the dyslexia was more severe. So this is why it's really important to understand that phonics instruction is really not enough. And I always say this, we need phonics instruction. We need science-based reading strategies, or teaching, I should say this, the science of reading, instruction based on that. And like I see people in vision therapy, and it's not that vision therapy is bad. It's fantastic, right action at the right time. But these things are not enough when the breakdown has to do with what's going on with the processing in the brain. We need to go into those deeper layers and so forth. And when we don't look at these things, we end up with like mediocre results. And these are the people you'll see who are in tutoring forever, or maybe they're not, but they're just trying so hard and they're not getting the results they hoped for. And what I want to say too is that phonics and vision therapy and all of those things that are great tools. I mean, we have vision exercises in my 6-month program, so obviously I'm for it, but it cannot be the first intervention. The first intervention has to be working on the lower brain levels, and address the processing breakdown that is occurring, so that kids aren't just getting by. Because whenever kids just get by, they set the bar low, right? And I know that you already know this, because pretty much every single mom I talk to tells me one of her top concerns is that her child is going to limit themselves, either because they literally can't do something or because they think they can't do something, whether that's taking academic risks like pursuing, post-secondary education, or whether that's pursuing professional risks, right? Like going for that career that makes you pushes you out of your comfort zone or whatever. So what really needs to happen is you need an approach that addresses, as I always say, the various areas of breakdown. So you need an approach that identifies the weak areas of the brain, that strengthens weak areas via targeted movement and cognitive and technology-based interventions. And you also need to implement exercises to build and improve phonemic awareness and visual processing. And I'm, really talking about the brain building stuff, but I talk a lot, and I know this is true when I say that we also have to work on improving the nourishment piece, which I talked about last week, and I'm talking about later on this week as well. That's a huge piece of the puzzle that gets so overlooked in education, and it just kills me whenever I think of how we're just missing such a huge piece of the puzzle. I've had some clients recently who've seen some really good progress with their child's reading, memory, all kinds of stuff, just by doing that piece of the puzzle before we've even gotten into the brain training. All that to say, let me know. I'm really curious to know, do you think that we could do a better job with diagnosing these reading difficulties as opposed to basing them on the senses? Doesn't make more sense to you to diagnose or identify them based on what kids can do sequentially and simultaneously? And do you have a child who has multiple areas of breakdown with, visual processing, reading comprehension, phonemic awareness, word recognition, all of that type of stuff, and so forth? So I'm going to be talking later on this week also about the flaws of basing this stuff, or basing diagnoses on a score. There's limitations to that as well. That's why in my 6-month program, we do the advanced brain screening, and we go through and identify. We're not looking for a diagnosis. We're looking to see what areas are weak, what areas are underdeveloped, what areas are imbalanced, whether it's biochemically, through, that we can address through nutrition, or whether that's with different exercises and brain training therapies and so forth. And we put that all together. And I do have the advanced brain screening right now. It's on sale for $197 instead of $297. So if you want to start getting an idea of what's going on, go beyond diagnosis or forgetting about diagnosis and really dive deep into the underlying causes so they can be addressed, then definitely grab that. I'll put the link in the comments below. So thanks for watching, everyone, and let me know what you are experiencing and what you think of this. Do you think dyslexia should be diagnosed, or reading disorder should be diagnosed on something else besides the senses? Thanks for watching.